That has an influence on everybody, certainly in this country.
Absolutely. You look at anyone who's been influential in a British government over the last, since the end of the last war, and they have PPE stamped on their CV.
Well, so is your focus maybe a little bit out, and actually you should be focusing on the PPE aspect and not the public school or private school aspect?
I think you can focus on both. I don't think it's right to divorce the way people get a place at Oxbridge and go on to study PPE, or Oxford and go on to study PPE. I think you have to understand how people get these places. And there's no doubt about it that disproportionately more people from top private schools, for whatever reason, and you can argue that it's because of the weakness of the state schools and the way they prepare their students. But ultimately, the figures speak for themselves when so many more people from private schools end up doing these PPE degrees and becoming influential movers and shakers in Great Britain.
Part of the issue is that you are not doing a student any favour if they go to Oxford or Cambridge on bad A levels.
Why?
In maths, physics, chemistry, because they need that solid knowledge base if they're going to survive that degree.
And if they don't have it, you're setting them up for a fall.
Yeah, and the problem that we've got is that for all their sins and weaknesses, what the public schools have managed to do is they've managed to attract in maths, physics, chemistry, biology graduates, that scarcest commodity in education, to teach their pupils, and they teach them extremely well. Now, what we should be doing is saying, how come the public schools have managed to get these teachers in? Because we need them in the state sector. And the minute you get a huge increase in the maths, chemistry, physics graduates teaching in the state sector, then you're going to see a turnaround in the Oxford Stakes and all the rest of it. You can't make allowances for a child of 18. At 18 years old, a student in the UK has been in full-time education for 13 years. If we can't get the children and the young people who've got the capacity to make it to an A grade in the sciences, what on earth are we doing? And that's not the fault of the public schools.
The youth don't accept the soldiers or the Israeli army to be in our village.
Amir! Savili miss you!
Look at the blood! You have no humanity! You have no humanity!
All the children, like we were seeing him just getting killed near us.
أيام فلسطين كلهم ميت.
الأرض هذه المحتلة هنضل مستمرين لحتى الموت.
It's a mess here, really. You never know what's happening and whether they're shooting, whether they're tear gassing.
مش بس ضرب حجار وهيك، لا بقدر أقاوم بالشعر، بالغناء، بالرسم.
وغزة هي الضحية والقدس صارت مفية، فصل شبه ممحية من الخريطة العربية، شمسك غزلين يغيب والأمل فيك لسه بيزيد، يا أمي لا تحزني إن النصر عن قريب، كل يوم نأتيك الشهيد شهيد تلو الشهيد.
Join me every Thursday on The Alex Salmond Show, when I'll be speaking to guests on the world of politics, sport, business and show business. I'll see you then.
Welcome back to Renegade Inc., the show that allows us to think differently. Before we talk more about private education and the class system with former headmaster Martin Stephen and journalist Robert Vercake, let's have a look at what you've been tweeting about in this week's Renegade Inc. Index. First up, from Holger Heistermeyer, what astonishes the Continental Observer of British politics is the gusto with which Oxford-trained privileged elites call each other bigwigs, when indeed they were all classmates.
I think that the continent is endlessly fascinated, other countries, particularly France, Germany, where they have managed to sustain successful economies, governments, without the need for this sort of shadow private education system. The fascination and interest in our quirky shadow education system is extraordinary, I think.
Shadow education system, like a shadow banking system. As if a shadow banking system isn't bad enough.
That every country I was in had its equivalent. They just weren't called public schools.
Right.
I mean, you go to the States. I mean, I know very little about the States, but I can tell you now the schools to go to in the States if you want the best chance of getting to Harvard, Yale, all the rest of it.
Right. Next from Michael, a private school is offering austerity lunch, or normal lunch, as normal people call it. Jacket potatoes, baked beans, coleslaw and fruit for dessert.
All I can say is we all get it wrong sometimes. It wasn't me, by the way, please, but
Next from Business Insider, a dating app is coming to the UK, and you can only join if you went to a private school. Finally, from Matthew Goodwin, bleak percentages that went on to the top third universities. Private school pupils 66%, state school pupils 23%. Over the last 10 years, the gap has widened from 37% to 43%, and those figures are from the Department of Education.
I am tutoring, or was tutoring, a candidate from a school ranked as outstanding in the United Kingdom. She said that she wanted to apply to Cambridge, so Oxford, to read science. Her headmaster said to her, "You're aiming far too high. What's wrong with other universities?" It's all about aspiration. Now, you can criticise the public schools, quite rightly, for being over-aspirational.
Yes.
But actually, the number of times I meet students who've been told to calm down when they've said they want to apply to a Russell Group university is worrying.
I was going to just simply add that it's the other side of the coin, isn't it? Because we've talked about how elites tend to dominate society through a private education background, but some of the schools produce children who are victims of that process as well. When the bar is so high and you know that you're never going to meet it because it is ludicrously high.
I just wonder, though, if we're not in danger of making a terrible mistake here in overestimating the value of happiness. I hated my time at public school. Absolutely loathed it. I remember standing outside my home in Sheffield in the rain saying, "Martin, don't know where you're going to go, don't know what you're going to do with your life, but you're never going to set foot inside another expletive deleted school again, ever again."
But isn't that right?
Now, I would argue that actually my unhappiness was kind of a friction drive. Possibly, if I'm being really honest with myself, and actually the first time I realised this when I wrote this book, first time I realised that I have probably been driven in my life far more by a fear of failure than I have by a sense of happiness.
You know, if you are full of certainty, and you often see this in the political class, then often you can deliver a decision, you know, for is it Brexit, is it whatever it might be, because you're absolutely certain that it's your way and you can see that clearly. The best leaders I've worked with always have that 20%, 30%, 40% of doubt, and are able to, are emotionally aware enough and socially aware enough to go slowly to be able to work out how to get there. But often public schools knock that out of people.
To me, leadership is knowing what your dream is, what your vision is. It's being much less certain about how you get there. And the other crucial thing to me about leadership, which I've learned, I think, being a headmaster, is we talk about leaders. I do not know a single leader who hasn't had self-doubt, but I also don't know a single leader who hasn't built up a brilliantly loyal team.
We're going to do something unique. You've both written books which are very successful, and I think you should pitch each other's, because I originally thought this was going to be a huge, you know, media head-off between the anti-establishment, anti-public school and somebody who's been an absolute guardian of them. Why is the English Public School by Martin Stephen, why is this a good book?
People should read it because it's, I think, a refreshing, independent take on not just the history of public schools, but where they are now. I mean, this is a book that is prepared to acknowledge some of the, you know, the failings or weaknesses, but come up with some, you know, really good solutions for tackling. And it's I would describe Martin's book as a wake-up call to the independent sector.
Martin, Posh Boys, how the English public schools ruin Britain.
When I read that book, I felt the ultimate compliment, which was envy. I wish I'd written it. I mean, the fact is that Robert is, and we have met each other before, is a deeply honourable man, and an awful lot of what's in that book I would agree with. My only criticism or complaint about the book is I think there's more that needs to be said. In other words, I think the schools are trying to dig themselves out of this area.
Given just how class-driven this society is, where 2/3 of all good jobs go to the 7% who go to private schools, I'm not surprised that the working class is seething with resentment. I'd be resentful if by the time you're 12 and you choose your secondary school and it's not private, you already know that basically the top jobs are not for you. Also because the 1/3 top jobs that go to people who went to state schools are mostly state schools in such expensive neighborhoods that you pay your school fee through your mortgage. So this place is so unfair, so manifestly, depressingly unfair. One of the reasons I don't want to continue living here.
Let's jump straight to solutions. We've spoken about the problems. How do you begin to start getting these two seemingly opposing, but not, seemingly opposing organisations to start talking to each other so everyone's better?
Unfortunately, I think we do need a national education system. If we really want every pupil to have an equal opportunity, if we're being serious about democracy, if we want a big society, a shared society, all the things that, is it for the many, not the few? All these sort of aphorisms, are meaningless unless you start at the beginning.
Right, and how do we do that? What does that look like to you?
So for me, it means that we need the private schools, to work much more closely with the public, with the state schools. But that needs to be, it needs to be more serious. It needs to be proper intent. And unfortunately, I just don't believe that we can do it gradually. It should be a reform that would take place overnight. We've had, hundreds of years of attempting to do it, and it's achieved, I would argue, not enough. We will have an apartheid education system in this country for many, many years to come, perhaps more diverse in years to come, unless we do something drastic.
I think that one of the great sort of risks, I'll put even strongly, one of the great sort of dangers is that this unarguable idea of equality of opportunity has been let to morph into everybody must only have the same opportunity.
Right.
And what we're not providing in our education system at the moment overall is enough variety. We're not providing choice. It's the one-size-fits-all system. I am absolutely passionately committed to the independent schools, either clawing back the endowments that were nicked from them by and large in the 19th century, or raising their own money and basically aiming towards needs-blind entry. In my opinion, you should apply to an independent school because it's offering what you as a child need based on who you are and what you are. And if you can't afford it, you shouldn't have to pay for it.
Is it the case that some of these independent schools, private schools, actually are sowing the seeds of their own demise because because they are putting people through pretty much the same culture and the same syllabus and all the rest of it? And actually, some of that, or most of that now, doesn't really relate to what's going to happen in the market, what's going to happen in the economy. The state schools should and could, with a bit of thought, say, we can offer something really different and we can start preparing people in a less orthodox way because we see how the economy's moving, we see how the world's moving. So actually, we're going to find out what was wonderful in the pupil and bring that out.
Absolutely. And
why aren't
there are schools doing it. There are top state schools, who compete with the private sector and do very well. But there are an awful lot of kids who are not going to benefit from these schools. There are council estates across Britain with kids who have never heard of Eton, Harrow, Winchester. They have no idea that there are charities in this country whose principal purpose is to promote the interests of a privileged few. These are kids who are going to go to their grave completely abandoned and disowned by their own education.
I would like to ask almost an alternative question. I mean, who is the more immoral? The public school that says you must apply to Oxford or Cambridge, or the state school where no student has gone to a Russell Group university for the past 10 years because the word isn't mentioned? They're both wrong.
They are. So where's this happy? Where's this medium? Where's this compromise?
The big weakness of our educational system is that it is a supplier for employers and universities. That's its job. It is a supply chain. We must be one of the few systems in the world where the universities or the employers have virtually no control over the curriculum or schools in the United Kingdom. You look at Germany, the non-academic, if you like, the vocational school, had 3 times more applicants than the academic school because they knew they had a job at the end of the day. Why? The employers designed the curriculum. We've missed out on this.
Couldn't agree more. I mean, part of the problem, I think, is that there aren't more schools like Manchester Grammar. Because if there were more school trailblazers, schools that were prepared to engage with the community and prepared to, offer a substantial, not a pathetically small number, but a substantial number of, bursaries, genuinely free places to these schools, and the community could see the relevance, and they'd be reminded why a top school like Manchester Grammar School is there and it could be an important part of the community. Then maybe we wouldn't be having this debate even. But unfortunately, Manchester Grammar is, and few schools like it are the exception and not the rule.
Well, you headed it up for all those years. How'd you roll it out?
I think that we need basically a major culture change in our whole attitude to education. One of them is actually replicating the Finnish example, the respect in which you hold teachers. Because if you increase the respect in which you hold teachers and the teaching profession, not only do you get more graduates into schools, but you actually increase the bargaining power of that profession with the government.
Yes. They are, they're the backbone of any school, obviously, but in the state sector, they're working in a completely underfunded institution, as underfunded as the health service. And is it any wonder that we read about state teachers being poached by, international private academies in China or Russia? They want to be paid and valued.
But the other thing is it's not the same job. The physics graduate who wants to teach other people who wish to read physics at Imperial is not necessarily a genius with the 11-year-old remedial class.
It's a different skill set.
It's one size fits all, and it's not true, because children are different. They need different teachers to teach them, and we don't allow for that in our system.
That's it from Renegade Inc. HQ this week. You can drop the team a mail, stuart@renegadeinc.com, or you can tweet us @Renegade Inc. Join us next week for more insight from those people who are thinking differently. But until then, stay curious.
When old truths seem wrong, when old rules just don't hold, and a new world is yet to shape out, disdain becomes the etiquette, and engagement equals betrayal. When so many find themselves worlds apart, we choose to look for common ground.
Max Kaiser's Financial Survival Guide. They say money doesn't grow on trees. Oh, look, quantitative easing. This is how central banks support dying economies. I'm going to call them right now and say, stop the madness! Stop the madness!
Only this road, that 50 meters, is the thing between us and between the settlement.
What is this?
That's a gas canister.
A gas canister here in the graveyard.
It's normal.
We were able to count 1,500 gas canisters shot in one day.
Wow.
This is my house. You can see how much they shoot tear gas either.
Wow.
Usual. It is the usual thing.
Amir! Amir! Davili Mishu!
And they shoot him here. He ran away, and he fell down exactly here. All his blood.
Look at the blood! You have no humanity!
All the children, like we were seeing him just getting killed near us. أول مرة بشوف شاهد استشهد قدامي عيطت عليه.
اليوم فلسطين كلهم ميت. الأرض هذه المحتلة هنضل مستمرين لحتى الموت.
مش بس ضرب حجار وهيك، لا بقدر أقاوم بالشعر، بالغناء، بالرسم.
من تحويل الطلقات أدوات القتل لمواد سلمية.
This is what Palestinians see as theirs. But technically, they only have Gaza and parts of the West Bank, what Israelis refer to as Judea and Samaria. Palestine has never been independent. The land has changed hands and names several times throughout history. It was once called the Kingdom of Israel, for example, as well as Palestina. But fast forward to 1917, the Brits are in charge. And in 1947, the UN decides to divide the British mandate for Palestine and create two new states. An independent home for Palestinians and a safe haven for millions of Jews scattered all over the world after centuries of persecution. Arabs were furious. They were the majority at the time and felt that they were losing out to Zionism, a movement seeking to re-establish the biblical Israel. To give up, but Israel held on to its independence through war. Even when other Arabic countries joined the fight, Israel kept on winning and seizing parts of their lands. Decades on, and the international consensus seems to be that the 1967 borders are the most sensible. But as it stands, Israel withdrew from Gaza and gave Palestinians autonomy in some parts of the West Bank, like areas A and B. With no peace agreements and endless violence, Israel put up borders, checkpoints, fences, and walls to protect their citizens from terror attacks. This is part of the Israeli West Bank security barrier, or the apartheid wall, as some have called it. A violation of international law that undermines peace talks, according to many. This place is now a tourist hotspot and the best way to get immersed in the Palestinian side of the story.
Thank you.
Это очень хорошо, кафе. Это палестинский.
А вы по-русски разговариваете, да?
Как зовут тебя?
Марина.
Марина, очень приятно.
أولاً أصبح الجدار هو أفضل مكان مناسب كي يضع الفنان أو الشخص رسمته عليه أو أن يوصل رسالته للعالم من هذا المكان. فقبل مدة قصيرة دعت إسرائيل أو الفريق الإسرائيلي لكرة القدم الأرجنتين فريقهم للعب في أرض إسرائيل، فرفضت الأرجنتين ذلك، فهي الأرض للفلسطينيين ونحن لن نكون شركاءكم في هذا الاحتلال في هذه الأرض.
The Argentinians said it had nothing to do with politics, and Israel's sports minister claimed terror threats were the real reason for the cancellation. This is Razan Najjar, a 21-year-old volunteer paramedic from Gaza. She was shot by Israeli soldiers at the demonstrations. More on that later.
الكثير يأخذون لبعضهم صوراً على الجدار أو يتصورون سيلفي لأنفسهم مع الجدار، فوضعت هذه المرآة لأوصل لرسالة إنه كيف ترى نفسك على الجدار. وعهد التميمي هي طفلة تبلغ من العمر 15 عاماً من قرية النبي صالح من قضاء رام الله.
لما كانوا اثنين من إيطاليا كانوا يرسموا، وأنا بحب هاي الرسمة، فهاي هدية كبيرة لعهد التميمي.
وبعد ذلك قامت قوات الاحتلال بمداهمة بيتهم والعبث بمحتوياتهم، وقاموا باعتقالها وزجها بالسجن رغم صغر سنها. هي لم تؤذي، وهي ليست إرهابية، وهي ليست مخربة وليست تهدد دولة إسرائيل كما يعتقدون أن هذه محرضة.
This video went viral around the world. What some failed to mention was that this was after soldiers had shot and injured her 15-year-old cousin in the head. She was 16 when she was arrested and sent to prison along with her mother, who filmed this. We were heading to meet Ahed's relatives. Movement is restricted for Palestinians in the West Bank. Most need a permit to cross into a different area, and Israel has the right to refuse the request or to close the gate, citing security concerns. Nabi Saleh is a small but notorious Palestinian village where most of the residents are related to the Tamimi family. They've been activists for years, regularly holding demonstrations against settlements, military presence, and the confiscation of land.
You have no humanity, you have no mercy. Oh, just killing, just arresting children. You arrested my brother, he's 13 years old.
Jana is one of the youngest journalists in the world. She was a child when she happens here.
1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Good, how are you?
Hi.
Hi.
Noel.
Nice to meet you, Marina.
Welcome to you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Welcome, everybody.
Let's go.
In other villages, like, the demonstrations are only for men, boys, and everything. But here in Nabi Saleh, usually females are leading everything. Yeah.
Okay. All right, so it's all about girl power here as well.
Yeah. We have, like, nearly 350 people got arrested, like, maybe a person got arrested 3 times, 4 times. Yeah, not only 1 time. We have also about 350 people got injured.
Muhammad, they arrested him when he 18 and a half.
Because they maybe saw him at a protest or something, like?
They said he threw stones.
He threw stones?
He threw stones? Maybe.
Well, maybe not.
Maybe yes, maybe not. Hello.
Okay.
That's my uncle. He documents everything.
Hello. Nice to meet you.
This is my YouTube channel, and I'm trying to upload or document anything I can from what's happening in the village here. I have a lot of videos. I began to document in 2010, since the beginning of the weekly demonstration, which began in the village here.
Why are they throwing? What's happening?
What's happening that usually the youth don't accept the soldiers or the Israeli army to be in our village, and they know that they are coming to arrest or to kill or to shoot against the people here. You can see how much they shoot tear gas either.
Wow.
Usual, it is the usual thing. In 2010, 2011, we were able to count 1,500 gas canister shot in one day.
Wow.
Many times, it's happened many times. If they notice anything, they can immediately come to the village. They try to chase the youth.
Who they brought you today to kill more people?
Are you coming to kill here? Don't you know who are you killing?
And when they come here to arrest someone, why do they come? Because someone was throwing something at them and then they come to...
99% yes. They came to anyone who's filmed or they have information about any of the youth who was throwing stones. And that's what's happened with my two sons 6 months ago. In this video, you can see when they arrest my first son, when they came after midnight to the house. This was in my house.
لا تبيمي؟
بلال.
أهلا وسهلا وأنت شو الاسم؟
We are sleeping here. They
bang on the door?
Yes, very hard. And Bilal opened his house and they go and search everything. And they come to my house here. My mother, she's sleeping because she
makes kidney dialysis. So she was sleeping and everything, and they came wake her up with a sniper room, and then they put all of his parents, his brother and sister, his young brother and sister in a room.
And the second one, they arrested him 10 days after while he was coming back from his work in Ramallah.
The zombie bank plague has spilled over to zombie corporations. What is a zombie bank? A zombie bank is a bank that's technically insolvent, but it's kept alive by bailouts, continuing rolling bailouts from the central banks because of their friends in the banks, the commercial banks, the Lloyds, the HSBC, the BNP, the Citibank. They're technically insolvent, but they're kept alive, even though they're zombies, through the perpetual rolling of bailouts they call quantitative easing or some other name that they come up with every few months.
Как ты решился бросить официальную работу, заняться только блогерством и сельским хозяйством? Было тяжело, конечно, но мы сделали это.
Всем привет! Сегодня мы ответим на ваши вопросы.
Было какое-то разочарование такое. Руки опускались, не знал, с чего начать.
Я не знаю, как это вообще будет. Я просто не представляю.
Это вообще, блин. Я понимал, что это утопия, другого выхода просто не было.
Ну все, муженек сходил на охоту.
Выставляя свою жизнь на показ, да, страшно, боязно.
Да не плачь, а что я расплачусь.
Пришлось поднатужиться, но мы осуществили свою мечту.
Реалити-шоу, что ли?
Это жизнь.
So this is where what happened? Can you tell me?
Before 2 weeks, the soldiers come here and they shoot Azzeddin. He's just 19 years. The soldiers near the tree, he stopped there. The first one, he shoot him here, exactly here, yes. They shoot him another live bullet in his neck. Yes. And he fell down exactly here. All his blood. My kids, Jannah and Samer, they saw the soldiers when he his blood like this, they hit him. After that, she make a live video.
Here's all his blood. مقطع القرية. تصاب شابه يستشهد.
It's very difficult to know about the kids when they saw the blood, they saw somebody, a friend, you know, he's a friend.
That's, we name it a small rocket, that when it comes, you cannot feel your hand. This, it takes about 60 ones. And then they shoot them from the Jeep. And those are the ones that have also this, but they shoot them from the guns.
So you've become like an expert in this, huh?
Yeah. Yeah, like I'm living with those for 9 years. Yeah. Here are the gas canisters. Those are gas canisters that we collected only from around the house. We drew the map of Palestine with those here, over there. And we did it to show the world that we can make from the things that can make us die a life. We can see the settlement from everywhere. Like, it's like I can see it from my house, from my window, from my garden, from everywhere. They come raid the village, sometimes try to burn mosques and try to shoot people. Once they got the fire bottles, and that's why we have those.
Oh.
They usually throw them on the windows to burn the houses.
The settlers?
Yeah. It's really big. Like, it's not only this mountain. There's another mountain on the other side of this settlement. That's a balloon that they fly that have a camera.
Who?
Israelis.
Israelis have a camera in that balloon?
Yeah.
And is that how they monitor, I guess, what's happening here? Over the years, hundreds of thousands of Israelis have moved to the West Bank and established settlements. It's illegal under international law and is often at the expense of Palestinian homes.
See? That's a part of the bomb canister. They take it off, and then it just explodes. Sometimes bullets fell from them.
Ah, really?
And we pick them up and then take the thing inside them, just throw it, and then make it a necklace.
Do you have a necklace like
I
that?
had one, yeah, and I gave it for Ahad, and now she's in prison.
Oh.
Like, we have here houses who have demolishing orders for being in Area C.
So this is half an area considered half Zone B, half Zone C.
Yeah, but like,
where's the half? How do they know? Where's the divided line?
There is a map that we know the lands. Here, see the gas canister.
And who lived there?
Fortunately, the people who were living there, they were in the U.S. So yeah.
They moved?
Yeah.
Okay.
Come here, you can see the yellow gate over there.
Is that a checkpoint?
That's a checkpoint.
That's the checkpoint.
That's the Israeli tower. Yeah. Here's the settlement.
Yeah, we can see it clearly now.
Yeah.
It looks, can I just say that it looks completely different. The houses there look completely different to the houses here.
Yeah. See, we have water tanks because we have water problems and they don't have. Those black things are water tanks. They stole the water spring, so we had to get water only 12 hours a week. The settlers got the water 24 hours. And you can see how much green is over there because they have water. Here's an Israeli Jeep down there. Here's the graveyard.
What is this?
That's a gas canister.
A gas canister here in the graveyard?
It's normal. Here, that's a mortar, the first mortar. It's not the first mortar of Nabi Saleh, but it's the first mortar from the demonstrations. And here's the second martyr. He's my uncle. He was killed when he was looking on the demonstration. He was coming back from his work. He worked as a policeman. They shoot him with live munition. So that's the grave of Az, the last martyr, 19 years old. He was killed before 2 weeks. And all the children, like, we were seeing him just getting killed near us.
كنت نايم سمعت صوت طخ طلعت أشوف شو في انتبهنا له قلنا له ينتبه إنه في جيش محوطين المنطقة هاي. بعدين راح منطقة سمعنا صوت طخ، حاولنا نشوف شو فيه، شفنا الجنود هجموا جري، شفنا واحد مرمى على الأرض. حاولت أنزل بس الجندي مخلانيش رفع السلاح علي، وطلعت على السطح شفتهم بضربوا فيه.
Look at the blood! You have no humanity! You have no humanity when you kill a child directly on his hand! We want him to take him to the hospital!
أول مرة بشوف شهد استشهد قدامي، عيطت عليه.
Some accuse the Tamimis of using their children as props to provoke clashes with the IDF to spark another big uprising. But the kids would tell you that their frustration doesn't come from brainwashing, but from the reality they face and live with every day.
كوني درست الفنون فبحس اني جزء لا اتجزأ من هذا المجتمع، واجبي اني اعبر عن الاشياء اللي بعاني منها. واثنين منحوتين بخامة الاسمنت واللي بيعبروا عن اللي هم كونهم شاهدين على جرائم هذه الحرب. الاطفال في طفل مرسوم على خشبة الصبار او اللي هي جذور الصبار، هو كانت يعني تتمحور حول مثلا اقتحامات في الليل واخذ بعض سكان البلد، بالاضافه الى وجود المعسكر وخاصه انه قبال البيت عندنا. كمان شغله يعني بعض الصور اللي كنت اصورها لما اجي اعمل لوحه على نبته الصبار يظهر بالصوره شكل المستعمره على الخلفيه تاعت الصوره في نهايتها. العمل الفوبيا هو مشروع تخرجي متكون من 3 لوحات، بيحكي عن مرض من الامراض الاضطرابات النفسيه وهو مرض الفوبيا. فحاليا احنا بما ان ابناء هذه المنطقه غير المعروفه بأحداثها بمخاطرها، صار الواحد عنده نوع من التشويش. هذا أنا نفسي الألوان اللي استخدمها هي الألوان الرمادية اللي بتدل على كونها ألوان حيادية، كذلك بتدل على عدم معرفة الشيء الجديد اللي ممكن يجينا، يعني كأنه إحنا بنعيش في مرحلة تشويش وفزع وخوف من المجهول. في النهاية هنا في عمل كمان بيحكي برضو عن الصبر والتحمل والثبات. برضو كان هو عمل تركيبي بيرمز اللي هو صمود وثبات أهل غزة في مسيرة العودة اللي صارت في آخر شيء.
Over in Gaza, this is what's been happening every Friday. Tens of thousands of Palestinians gather at various points along the Gaza-Israel border, demanding an end to the blockade and the right to return home. It started as part of a 6-week campaign called the Great March of Return. It became really intense around mid-May when Israel marked its 70th Independence Day. It's also when Palestinians mark Nakba Day, when they were displaced and had to flee. We arrived when the protests were still underway.
عادي زي وطني، هذا دافع عن وطني.
الضفة كلها شعب واحد، كل جمعة باجي. احنا مصرين نضلنا نيجي هنا لن نحرر بلدنا. احنا ما فينا حاجة. أولادنا كل أحفادنا معنا. احنا مسيرة سلمية جايين.
احنا جايين هنا ندافع عن أراضينا وبلدنا. جايين نطلع اليهود من أراضينا ونجيب حق العودة ونجيب القدس. أنا جاي على عكاكيزان مشان أخلي الناس مستمرين هان في الأرض هذه المحتلة، حنضل مستمرين لحتى الموت.
Teenagers usually throw firebombs or burn tires to obscure the view for Israeli snipers, who in turn tear gas them and often use rubber bullets as well as live rounds. Israel claims this is to stop mass infiltration and bombs being placed along the border, as they can't see because of the flames. More recently, Palestinians started flying incendiary kites and balloons. This causes fires on the other side, costing Israel a lot of money and scaring Israelis who live nearby.
It's a mess here, really. You never know what's happening and whether they're shooting, whether they're tear gassing.
Dozens end up injured here every time, and many have died.
Why did you have to kill them to stop them scaling the fence?
Everything you said, Mr. Howard, has been tried, and other things, and it didn't work. And in fact, nobody intentionally went out to kill anyone. People died accidentally. And I can tell you that Hamas, at a certain point, said, not enough people are being killed.
C'est que s'il parle à quelqu'un, il risquerait de mourir ou de devenir fou. C'est un secret de l'Église.
A church secret indeed. Catholic priests accused of sexually abusing children can get away with it, quite literally.
I like to call this the geographic solution. So what the bishop needs to do then, he finds out that the priest is a perpetrator. He simply moves him to a different spot where the previous scandal is not known.
The highest ranks of the Catholic Church help conceal the accused priests from the police and justice.
Sua Santidad, en el caso Gracia, intentando influir a la justicia argentina.
Expose the truth. Protect the children. Expose the truth.
Brett Kavanaugh fools, is there a plan B?
I have two questions about Judge Kavanaugh.
What does that have to do with trade? I don't mind answering the question, but, you know, I'd like to do the trade question.
It has to do with the other headline in the news.
Sexual assault allegations against Donald Trump's Supreme Court nominee overshadow the announcement of a crucial new trade deal with America's neighbors. Also ahead on the program this hour, Germany reportedly joins other European countries and greenlights a multi-million-dollar arms deal with Saudi Arabia. That's despite outcry over the Saudis' participation in the Yemeni conflict. And civil war in South Sudan claimed almost 8 times more lives than previously through a newly released report. Just gone 1 a.m. in Havana, 3 p.m. in Melbourne, and 8 in the morning right here in Moscow. Welcome to RT International. I'm Ewan O'Neill. Our top story. Donald Trump has fulfilled one of his campaign promises, a new trade deal between America, Canada and Mexico. But the announcement of the landmark agreement was overshadowed by sexual misconduct allegations against U.S. President's Supreme Court nominee, Brett Kavanaugh. And it also added fuel to Trump's standoff with the media.
Truly historic news. This will be a new dawn. This landmark agreement, an incredible this new deal will be the most modern, up-to-date and balanced trade agreement in the history of our country.
Brett Kavanaugh fools, is there a plan B?
I have two questions about Judge Kavanaugh.
This weekend, Mr. President, you said that it's incorrect to say you're limiting the scope of the FBI investigation.
What does that have to do with trade? I don't mind answering the question, but, you know, I'd like to do the trade
It has
questions.
to do with the other headline in the news, which is the Kavanaugh
I know, but how about talking about trade, and then we'll get to that. Do you have a question on trade? We'll do one or two more questions on trade.
You answered several questions
Okay,
on
don't
trade.
do that. That's not nice.
Mr. President,
and besides that, somebody is before you. Excuse me. Don't do that. Do you have a question on trade?
You answered several questions.
Do you have
on
a
trade.
question on trade?
My question is on Judge
Okay,
Kavanaugh.
please. Question? Yeah, go ahead. She's shocked that I picked her.
Good.
Like in a state of shock.
I'm not thinking, Mr.
That's
President.
okay. I know you're not thinking. You never do.
It was Trump's big day as he unveiled a new deal with Canada and Mexico that's supposed to replace NAFTA. And if you remember, he once called NAFTA the worst deal ever. But Trump's replacement deal is apparently a historic transaction. The deal, which took over a year to negotiate, is called the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement. And it'll apparently solve all of the problems with NAFTA, as in it'll open markets to farmers and manufacturers and reduce trade barriers. But during his campaign, Trump had promised to either break it, so this new deal fulfills that promise. But at the press conference, journalists they were really interested in the Kavanaugh case. And to remind the viewers, Kavanaugh is Trump's Supreme Court nominee who was accused of sexual harassment. Some have even said that Trump's moment was stolen from him. So an important development in economic policy was once again overshadowed by the latest liberal scandal of the moment. And it doesn't look like it'll stop anytime soon.
To another of our headline stories this hour. The number of those dead as a result of the civil war in South Sudan has reached almost 400,000. That's 8 times more than previously thought. Caleb Maupin now takes a closer look at the unnoticed war.
South Sudan is the youngest country in the world, and according to a new report from the U.S. State Department, it's off to a pretty bleak start. Almost 400,000 people killed. Half of them killed in the conflict, the other half dying of hunger and disease. Now, previously, prior to this report, the estimates had only been in the tens of thousands. But now, it looks like the numbers of deaths in South Sudan are approaching the number that have died in the conflict in Syria. Pretty bleak, but it wasn't always like this. Now, in the 1990s, there was no South Sudan. Sudan was one country, and it was embroiled in the longest-running civil war in the continent. However, there were some perks. At that point, Sudan had lots of oil to sell, and China was pouring in investments. And that is when the sanctions rolled in. Sudan was declared to be a state sponsor of terror. Bill Clinton bombed a factory in 1998 that he said was making chemical weapons.
Our forces also attacked a factory in Sudan associated with the bin Laden network. The factory was involved in the production of materials for chemical weapons.
But actually, the factory was just making medicine. No evidence of chemical weapons has ever been produced. Now, the USA pushed for South Sudan's independence. In 2011, the USA hailed South Sudan for breaking away and becoming a new country.
We warmly welcome the Republic of South Sudan into the community of sovereign nations.
But the euphoria did not last long.
It breaks my heart to see what South Sudan has become today.
The country fell into a civil war between rival clans. The president turned against the vice president, and mass killings and hunger ensued. And all this killing was a headache for the United Nations. So, with a new administration now in the White House, the U.S. role in South Sudan is being reassessed.
The United States government will not continue in a partnership with leaders who are only interested in perpetuating an endless war characterized by ethnically motivated atrocities. The government of South Sudan has lost credibility, and the United States is losing patience.
Yes, South Sudan is yet another example of the U.S. State Department telling us that they're going to go rescue some poor oppressed people on the other side of the planet. And then they're left spending money to analyze results, showing that the conditions overall are getting a lot worse.
To an extent, the world seemed to have forgotten about South Sudan. Not too long ago, it was the world that was rallying together to form this new nation, then at the expense of Northern Sudan, which was run by Bashir. And it would appear that petty politics between the Chinese and the US in terms of their respective influences on those countries have meant that, for now at least, the world seems to have forgotten about the Sudan crisis, seems to have forgotten about the displacement of people, women and children, and displacement of children across the nation, and is very much an impoverished state. And of course, we know that a lot of things do not work effectively in South Sudan, and for all intents and purposes, the West and the international community seems to have turned a blind eye.
The British Defence Secretary, Gavin Williamson, has unveiled a new strategy for the Arctic, calling Russia the biggest threat to the region. 800 UK troops are due to be deployed to Norway next year. There have been disputes for decades over territorial claims on the planet's most northern point and over untapped natural resources under the seabed. The British Defence Ministry says the Arctic and High North are now crucial to the country's security.
In the Arctic and High North, Russia is increasing their military presence. To deal with this, we will be launching our new Defence Arctic strategy. Beyond the High North and Arctic, we must be ready to deal with the threats as they emerge.
The new Defence Arctic strategy will put the Arctic and High North central to the security of the United Kingdom.
Britain has got no legitimate claim there whatsoever. So what we're doing, putting 800 troops at some considerable expense in Norway, not one of the cheapest countries in the world. So I don't quite get what is going on, because I mean, 800 troops is a drop in the ocean. I mean, this is not a serious force if you're talking about a conventional ground war, goodness sake. But, you know, the atmosphere is weird. The commander of the new British super aircraft carrier came on the media yesterday and said that Britain would win a naval war with Russia. I mean, firstly, what on earth? There is no possibility of a naval war with Russia. Secondly, if there was a war with Russia, it wouldn't just be a naval war, it would be a disaster. So I've no idea what this gung-ho attitude is, that really, you know, that we should be stepping up the ante by talking all the time about this military threat from Russia. The idea that Russia is about to launch a conventional war in the Arctic, which is all that these commandos could be there for, 800 of them, not enough to stop any serious operation, is a bit mind-boggling. So I think, firstly, this is playing to the gallery at the Conservative Party conference. Secondly, it's about the continued expansion of NATO forces around the borders of the former, and into the former Soviet Union.
Now, Germany has approved new arms exports to Saudi Arabia worth almost $300 million. That is according to German media, citing government officials. Now, the move came despite strong criticism of the Saudis for their participation in the Yemeni conflict, which has resulted in thousands of civilian casualties. But as RT's Ilya Petrenko reports, there's plenty more foreign countries willing to send weapons to Riyadh.
Innocent lives being taken away in Yemen by Saudi bombs. You may get the impression it's a big deal for them.
We are all concerned about the appalling humanitarian situation in Yemen
and the risk of harm to civilian populations.
This is the worst humanitarian crisis that in our time.
A humanitarian disaster.
This cannot become a forgotten crisis.
Speaking of deals, guess who Saudi Arabia and its coalition friends get their war machines from? These are called Leclerc tanks, made jointly by France and Germany. Here they are in a Yemeni desert. If it hadn't been for an Emirati mogul who once served as a middleman between Paris and Abu Dhabi, we might have never learned about the nuts and bolts of the tank purchase. But the guy didn't get his commission fee for his job as a broker. He went on to sue the French. Eventually, WikiLeaks spilled the beans on the trial and the contract numbers.
The contract with the government of the UAE was concluded on 6th of April 1993 for the delivery of 388 combat tanks Leclerc, 46 tank recovery armored vehicles, 2 training tanks, spare parts, ammunition, and various other deliveries at a price of $3,613,467,223.
over $3.5 billion worth of tanks, one of the coalition's many tools to reduce Yemen to rubble. Of course, the Saudis see it as fight against terrorism. Up next, missiles. I'll show you another contract. The money's already been paid, although delivery's still pending. Saudi Arabia is getting 400 US-made laser-guided missiles from Spain. They cost Riyadh 9.2 million euros. That's pennies compared to the tanks I told you about earlier, but the newly elected Spanish government was having second thoughts about the deal. Eventually, though, they all vanished.
We found no reason not to fulfill our commitments. We've made a decision that we have to honor this contract.
This brings us to one of the biggest arms deals in the history of Canada. Ottawa's been wary of what's going on with human rights in Saudi Arabia. However,
change of government in Ottawa doesn't lead to the cancellation of contracts previously signed, but moving forward, we are committed to the kind of openness, transparency, and rigor.
Or the number of zeros on the $12 billion paycheck is just way too tempting. So hundreds of Canadian-made armored vehicles will be heading to the Middle East. Next time you hear politicians get emotional over innocent victims in Yemen, picture a massive dollar sign in your head.
There are the interests of the arms manufacturers, of course, the largest being the United States, something like 60 to 70% of the arms sales of Saudi Arabia coming from the United States. But the English, the French, the Germans, the Norwegians have historically sold weapons, and that's an economic interest. The current leadership of Saudi Arabia feels empowered and enabled by their backing from the US, UK, and France.
Well, on Monday, Saudi Arabia admitted it had made mistakes in its attacks in Yemen during its 3-year campaign, which has left more than 10,000 civilians dead. That statement drew criticism from the United Nations, which stated there's no evidence that anyone was sanctioned over those so-called errors.
These tree leaves are an endless source of nutrition at times when the World Food Programme lacks food for us. Tree leaves are our main food.
There is no aid. One of my children suffers from mineral deficiencies, and doctor said that other has a kidney infection. We might die because of this food and because of the lack of aid and clean water.
We receive between 10 to 20 cases of mid to severe malnutrition on a daily basis, especially among children from displaced families from Abs and Hiran. Many children suffer from severe acute malnutrition due to the destitution and poverty in which displaced families live.
Just approaching 60 minutes past 8 a.m. this Tuesday morning here in Moscow. Much more global news coming up in 90 seconds' time.
Weighed down by a poor credit record, finding it difficult to borrow money.
Everyday Loans could help. They offer a range of loans from £1,000 to £15,000.
They're flexible as well as being friendly and approachable.
Apply online and they'll give you a conditional decision in minutes.
That's right. With Everyday Loans, it is simple and straightforward. Representative APR 93.6%. Apply now at everydayloans.co.uk and discover your credit future, not your credit history.
Go to vanarama.co.uk and lease a Vanarama van.
You're back with RT International. Nearly 200,000 people gathered in the Spanish city of Barcelona on Monday evening. They were marking the one-year anniversary of the Catalan independence referendum that Madrid deemed illegal. Police were out in force to break up the march. Clashes erupted between protesters and the police in front of the regional parliament in Barcelona. Tear gas and rubber bullets were used to break up the crowds. Campaigners burned Spanish flags and chanted pro-separatist slogans. Earlier in the day, activists blocked major roads and railway lines across the restive region. OK, to another story that's got a lot of people talking. A test case in England could be about to make historic changes to the rights of parents in the country. The unprecedented situation could reverse the previous requirement for a mother to be registered on every birth certificate. Well, at the centre of the legal battle is a single parent who was born a woman, but now lives as a man after undergoing surgery. He wants to be identified as the father or parent and says that not being allowed to do so violates his human right to privacy and family life. English law, however, states that he must appear as the biological mother on the birth certificate. The situation is preventing him from receiving state benefits. Well, while this is a unique case in England, since 2016, the US state of California has given parents the choice to pick between mother, father, or simply parent, according to personal preference. Well, as I say, this has caused a lot of debate. We got the views of LGBT campaigner Peter Tatchell and political commentator David Vance.
The question this case raises is, who should be on the birth certificate? Should it necessarily be mother or father, or could it just be parent? I think that it's not really important for legal reasons or any other practical reason why it has to be a mother.
Peter's just said this. Let's remove mother from the birth certificate and replace it with something more non-specific, such as parent. But mothers give birth to kids. Sorry, spoiler alert, that's how it's been, that's how it's always going to be, and no amounts of debate are going to change that biological fact.
Why not just make a reasonable accommodation in these small number of cases to acknowledge this person as the parent, so the child will know that this person is their parent legally as well as in reality.
This child would become the first child in the history of this country, and I believe anywhere else, who on their birth certificate, the word mother is missing. So just consider this for a moment. Can you imagine the psychological damage that this would impact that child?
You know, the child will probably find it different and unusual, but as we've seen with same-sex parents, children get a handle on things pretty quickly. Love is about, you know, a parent's commitment and care for a child. What's on the birth certificate really doesn't affect that love and commitment.
In those instances that you've mentioned, same-sex couples, regardless of the configuration, the child was always born to a woman. Simple biological fact. You know what I mean? That's not being judgmental. It's a foundational fact that we must not run away from just because it might hurt some people's feelings.
There have been some trans men in a similar situation who have given birth, and they have accepted that they should be named as the mother. So this case is unique and it's different. But I think the number of instances that will be involved in a similar circumstance is so tiny, we should not get het up about it, and we should just make the accommodation.
But Peter, Peter, the law is not based on exceptions. The law must apply to all. You just can't operate it the way that you'd like to. So the fact of the matter is that this child was born to a woman, and therefore the birth certificate should reasonably reflect that reality.
Now, over 90 Palestinians have been wounded by Israeli gunfire during clashes in the West Bank and Gaza. That's according to the Palestinian Health Ministry. Palestinian activists used 50 fishing boats in an attempt to reach Israel by sea. They were protesting the 12-year-long blockade of Gaza. The protests were also aimed at Israel's controversial nation-state law, which Palestinians say makes them second-class citizens, as well as Donald Trump's U.S. embassy move to Jerusalem. Israel defends its actions on the Gazan border, saying it is defending itself from violent protesters and the Islamist militant group Hamas. A general strike also took place on Monday across the region, on the anniversary of a riot back in the year 2000, which saw 13 Israeli Arabs killed by police. Well, here on RT, we do have a special report on how Palestinian resistance is channeled not only through demonstrations, but also the power of art. You can watch it in full also online at RT.com. Here's a look, a brief glimpse really at that struggle.
أول مرة بشوف شاهد استشهد قدامي عيطت عليه.
And they shoot him here. He fell down exactly here. All his blood.
مقطع القرية.
We were able to count 1,500 gas canister shot in one day.
Wow.
This is my house. You can see how much they shoot tear gas either.
Wow.
Usual, it is the usual thing.
أيام فلسطين كلهم ميت.
الأرض هذه المحتلة هنضل مستمرين لحتى الموت.
مش بس ضرب حجار وهيك، لا بقدر أقاوم بالشعر، بالغناء، بالرسم.
بتحويل الطلقات أدوات القتل لمواد سلمية.
We drew the map of Palestine with those here, over there, and we did it to show the world that we can make from the things that can make us die a life.
اتصل علي وهو كان في مشارك مسيرة العودة. الطلقة اللي كانت في رجله في اللحم هنا استقرت في المنطقة هذه، طلعوها أكثر من قطعة صغيرة، فأنا عملت هنا مجسم تكون ذكرى له.
أولاً أصبح الجدار هو أفضل مكان مناسب كي يضع الفنان أو الشخص بصمته عليه أو أن يوصل رسالته للعالم.
Converting markets lingo and business jargon into what it means for the money in your pocket next. It's Boom Bust on 24/7 RT International.
If you're fascinated by the remarkable history of gold coins, the Rosalind Book of Gold will amaze you. Discover British and American coins, and only from Rosalind, this collection inspired by the thrill of Formula One racing. This superb hardback book is packed with facts about gold, the gold coins you can buy, their history and design, and there's no obligation. So text GOLD to 66777 now for your free copy of the Rosalind Book of Gold.
Weighed down by a poor credit record, finding it difficult to borrow money.
Everyday Loans could help. They offer a range of loans from £1,000 to £15,000.
They're flexible, as well as being friendly and approachable.
Apply online and they'll give you a conditional decision in minutes.
That's right. With Everyday Loans, it is simple and straightforward. Representative APR 93.6%. Apply now at everydayloans.co.uk and discover your credit future, not your credit history.
At Shark, we know the real test of any vacuum is in the home. So we challenge these people to try our most advanced lift-away yet.
We've got a lot of really high ceilings. Shark makes life really, really easy.
I've got a fox red Labrador that leaves red hairs everywhere, and I find the Duo Clean does an amazing job at really picking up the hairs.
I would give the Shark Powered Lift-Away 5 stars.
5 stars.
Shark, the UK's fastest growing vacuum cleaner brand. In store now.
Go to vanarama.co.uk and lease a Vanarama van.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard.
This is Boom Bust, broadcasting around the world and covering the world of business and finance and the impact upon you. Welcome aboard. I'm Bart Chilton. We are boom busting it out from Boston, Massachusetts, from the Boston City Hall, right behind me, at the Forbes Under 30 Summit. We're full of action, full of excitement, and a lot of great stuff coming to you right now. And to start us off, what is the Forbes Under 30 Summit here in Boston? Well, it's an amazing thing, lots of energy, and they're going to cover all sorts of issues. We see the Smart Hub conferences taking place here. I'm actually speaking tomorrow at one of the crypto events, an Oxford-style debate, but great things coming up. Artificial intelligence, machine learning, robots, we love them, some robots, and drones, etc. FinTech, finance in general, cryptocurrencies, e-commerce, green technology, science and space, plus entertainment, music, sports, even style. Lots of things coming up. But first of all, we're going to head back down to Washington to Boom Bust's own Daniel Brito for a few headlines. Daniel?
Thanks, Bart. Mexico, Canada, and the United States agreed on a draft revision of the North American Free Trade Agreement on Sunday, just short of a deadline imposed by the Trump administration. The Trump White House reportedly hopes for a vote on the treaty, an updated treaty in this Congress, but many legislators doubt that a vote before 2019 will be feasible. The new text has planks to please all sides, including measures to bring more car production to the U.S. and Mexico, and Canadian concessions on dairy issues for the U.S. side to tout. Canada's negotiators, for their part, succeeded in preserving the text of NAFTA's Chapter 19, which governs extrajudicial dispute settlements. Finally, the deal is renamed the U.S.-Mexico-Canada Agreement and also involves U.S. pledges to not hit Canadian auto imports with new tariffs. It's unclear, though, how much Canada can rely on those pledges, given that the U.S. also says the question of whether new metals tariffs from the U.S. will apply to Canada, and that will be settled on a separate diplomatic track. Tesla CEO Elon Musk is no longer the chairman of the board of the company he helped to found in 2004. Mr. Musk agreed to resign as chairman and other conditions in order to settle a lawsuit by the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, or SEC, into possible securities fraud. The SEC opened their investigation last week into tweets Musk sent in August about taking the company private if and when the stock price reached $420. Musk's tweets were apparently aimed at harming short sellers of Tesla stock. Mr. Musk will remain as chief executive at Tesla, and the company has effectively built its brand around the erratic South African billionaire. It is unclear whether the Tesla board will step in to check Musk's impulsive behavior, as the SEC seems to be inviting them to do, or whether Tesla can survive without Musk's celebrity aura.
And we are here at the Forbes Under 30 Summit in Boston, and we're pleased to be joined by Steve Valenson, who is the CEO of Growers. He's out of North Carolina, and boy, what he's doing is interesting, where he's combining technology and agriculture. Stephen, welcome. Welcome to Boom Bust.
Hey, thanks for having me.
And Stephen, how do you merge agriculture and technology? What's your secret sauce?
So we are a company that takes all of the data that's being generated on the farm, whether it be from machinery or for some soil sensors that we're mapping soil with all across the country, and we're coupling that with a platform that we built that analyzes all of that data and the soil that it came from to make recommendations really on how to precisely place seed and fertilizer.
What inspired you to do this?
So I grew up farming in South Dakota, and then when I went to school at North Carolina State University, and while I was there I started a soil testing laboratory because there was just a business opportunity to get into the private soil and water testing space. And it was there that I realized there's a better way to make recommendations on fertilizer if you can actually use and understand the data that's coming from the farm where the soil was placed. And so we developed a new way that kind of reinvented soil fertility recommendations and essentially rewrote the agronomy handbook using a farmer's own data, as opposed to the traditional method, which is land grant universities and kind of independent researchers, which is based on really small plot data. We essentially turn the entire world into a test plot.
And when we talk about what you're doing, it of course reduces the amount of inputs, whether or not it's herbicides or pesticides. It makes a more efficient, effective use of the soil, but it should also result in greater yields, right?
Yeah, so the key word really is optimization. And so we think that farmers, just like human beings, right? We all overcompensate for a lack of information. And the data that we're pulling out from the farm and then delivering it to them recommendations has been historically unavailable to them. It's fragmented, it's hard to analyze, it's hard to view, hard to aggregate. If we can do that, it helps them optimize literally everything that they apply on the farm, which includes capital too. So not only are we optimizing capital resources, but also seed and fertilizer and chemicals as well. And so when you do that, the profitability is a very nice byproduct of better optimization of resources.
The entire planet is full of soil, so theoretically, you could do this a lot of places around the world where they are farming, right?
That's correct. So the unique thing about agriculture is like every plant that's grown on Earth requires the same 16 micro and macro nutrients. Just the variation in the amounts is different. So corn is corn, whether it was planted in Iowa or in Central America, and so our technology and our science applies and works just as well there as it does in the more modern eras. It's just a matter of the ease of how effectively and efficiently we can capture the data. That becomes a challenge in more of the third world kind of countries and developing countries, but it's getting a lot better.
But what is it that you actually need to do it? You need the technology. Do you need a big expensive piece of equipment, either a tractor or a combine and a supercomputer? What do you need?
So the technology and the equipment that's housed in the technology housed in the equipment really is the limiting factor for the scaling of this type of product or service, in that the new technology or the new equipment that's being manufactured has all just tons of sensors that are capturing all this information. It's all tagged with this precise latitude, longitude, location with the GPS. Absent that information, you start to have much vaguer, more vague data sets. So it is a challenge, but it is getting better.
Well, that cost is significant. if it's going to be that amount of money, then I guess we have large corporate agriculture in the U.S. We're moving more towards that, for better or worse, but ADM and Cargill, Bunge, etc. But by the same token, I can see where perhaps non-governmental organizations or others might pool resources and sort of have a co-op to afford this more expensive equipment and then be able to use it in some of the places where they might not have the money of the U.S. or perhaps Europe, right?
Yeah, it can be substantially more. So I mean, just an average, grain combine this year, with and put a new header on it, you're probably looking upwards of $450,000 for one piece of machinery that you only use, 2 weeks out of the year. And the tractors, the sprayers, the planters, they're all right around that level. You probably couldn't even touch this type of technology for now if you had to start from scratch for less than $1 million. So. Yeah. As daunting as that may sound, it's amazing, how broadly adopted it's becoming, though, in some of these other regions.
So what are the major challenges that you have that are confronting you?
Initially, it wasn't the challenge. The big problem in agriculture, not problem, but the challenge for a business in agriculture is that it's very cyclical and that you only get one cycle per year, right? And so as we were developing products and technologies and iterating new things, you get to test one of those things per year, and then you have to wait 12 months to figure out how effective and successful you were. And so the adoption process in agriculture is by nature much, much more slower than any consumer product, where I can sell you something, you can try it, you can tell me if you like it, and then maybe buy it again. It just takes a long time, and that's, I think, been one of our advantages in the space, honestly, is that we've been here for 8+ years doing it. There's been a lot of new and exciting technologies that have been brought into the ag tech space that we're competing with almost, but the history that we have in agriculture is really helping now kind of separate us from our competition.
Now, Stephen, you told me before we started doing the interview that you were actually profitable, and that is different than a lot of the folks at the Forbes Under 30 Summit here who are startups or looking for money. So bravo for you, but share as much as you're willing to share about how you're doing as a company.
Yeah, so it's we started 8 years ago, so we've been at this for a while. It's been a pretty long, hard slog, and been very fortunate to grow and scale, in the past 5 to 6 years pretty significantly. So we're 33 people now, headquartered in Raleigh, North Carolina, and then we have a technology development office in Seattle, and then a few remote field offices in the southeast, and kind of southwest.
All right, and last question. What are your goals? What are your challenges? Where do you see yourself going in the next few years here, Stephen?
So we have raised a little bit of capital as we've kind of tried to aggressively scale some of our technology products. But one of the things that we did that really differentiate ourselves was sell a higher value product. And so that helps you generate more revenue quicker. But the catch is you have to be able to deliver high value. And so we've been really focused on delivering that high-value experience and high-value results to the farmers, and they're willing to pay for it, and that's the important part. And so if you can have, keep your customers pleased and get them to continuously pay you year over year, that's the trick to, generating a sustainable revenue.
That's Stephen Valenson, the CEO of Growers out of North Carolina. Thank you for what you're doing. We wish you well with your company, but we also wish you well because it'll help farmers and it'll help the environment and the planet. Thank you, Stephen. Good luck.
Good stuff from Boston, but stay tuned, because when we come back, we'll take things back to Beantown to take a look at the event with Chrissy I, and then we explore the fascinating world of what could be a huge breakthrough in the health industry. And as we go to break, here are the numbers at the closing bell.
Weighed down by a poor credit record, finding it difficult to borrow money.
Everyday Loans could help. They offer a range of loans from £1,000 to £15,000.
They're flexible, as well as being friendly and approachable.
Apply online and they'll give you a conditional decision in minutes.
That's right. With Everyday Loans, it is simple and straightforward. Representative APR 93.6%. Apply now at everydayloans.co.uk and discover your credit future, not your credit history.
Motorama says stop buying cars. Motorama says stop spending more than you want. Motorama says stop paying eye-watering deposits. Motorama says stop buying. Start leasing. With Motorama, you can lease a brand new Mercedes A-Class for just £269 a month. Go to Motorama.com. You'll never buy a car again.
These are Select Specs £6 a pair prescription glasses. And this
is the sour face of our competition. Sour face because they just can't compete with our prices.
But you don't have to be so bitter. Select Specs £6 a pair brand new prescription glasses are so much cheaper than a lot of high street specs.
They are easy to order, and every pair comes with scratch-resistant and anti-glare coatings included in the price.
So now you could afford a different pair of glasses for every day of the week.
Glasses like these.
Or these.
Or these.
Or these. Don't be bitter. Get a sweet deal on your prescription glasses with Select Specs.
To get your prescription glasses for just £6 a pair with scratch-resistant and anti-reflection lens coatings as standard, simply select your frames, send us your prescription, and let us do the rest. SelectSpecs.com.
Welcome back. The Irish Data Protection Commission, or DPC, is moving to investigate last week's massive data breach at Facebook. A spokesperson for the DPC said in a statement on Saturday that the Commission is concerned about the delay between discovery of the breach on Tuesday and public disclosure from Facebook on Friday. The DPC also says it is concerned about Facebook's failure to clarify the, quote, nature of the breach and the risk for users at this point. The DPC's official inquiry, under authority of the European Union's General Data Protection Regulation, could result in fines of up to 4% of Facebook's net global revenues. That formula would yield a fine in this case of just over $1.6 billion, as first reported by the Wall Street Journal. And now we take you from Washington back to Boston to catch up with Bart and the Boom Bust team. Bart, what's the energy like there right now?
Yeah, Daniel, it is super exciting here. All the entrepreneurs, the venture capitalists, lots of folks. We've got Senator Flake from Washington, Governor Kasich from Ohio, even the Mooch, Scaramucci was here earlier. Lots of things taking place, but it just got a lot more exciting right here where I'm standing because we're joined by Christy I of Counterpart X, our crypto and finance expert. Christy, I was not able to stay up as late as others last night. I know there were some great acts on the main stage there. You were here. Tell us about it.
Absolutely. We had Cardi B and Marshmello make a very special appearance for us last night. That was super exciting. But also the Startup Hub right behind me, that's actually where a lot of the action is taking place. There are a ton of new thought leaders coming into the space right now, and I was able to go to the Startup Hub to check out a lot of the new companies that are emerging. There's Maggie, who's started up Xfinity Tech, and she's doing amazing things with VR and AR technology and helping people with mental illnesses and disorders. So what they're trying to do is make suicide prevention a thing of the past. So they're taking that into the hands of technology. And so there's also Novo Bank as well, banking the unbanked. They're doing some very cool stuff with zero-fee payments as well and disrupting the entire banking and fintech industry. And as well as a ton of new blockchain technology companies as well emerging in the space.
Yeah, and that getting to the unbanked with no fees is one of the attributes that you and I talk about a lot. It's one of the attributes of crypto, but they're doing without crypto, right?
They're doing some partnerships with crypto and with MasterCard as well, but those are features that are coming up.
We got to get people banked.
Yeah.
And finally, what are you looking forward to coming up in the future here?
Well, we have Jeremy Alir right now, the CEO of Circle. He's going to be talking about the new stablecoin that he actually just launched, the USDC. So they just launched it last month, actually. So it's a very new feature. He's trying to disrupt Tether, which, as we know, has a very questionable reputation. So we're very excited to see what he has to say about that. And then we also have the co-founder of 0x. That's a coin that I've been following for years now. The co-founder of 0x is coming to speak, and he's going to be debuting his 0x coin, which is going to be an open source protocol for the decentralized exchanges.
Yeah, that's one of the things. You mentioned Tether, but there really needs to be a stable coin,
yes.
And we don't have a really great one out there. A lot of people are looking, a lot of cryptos are looking for sort of a benchmark, so that's pretty important, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So right now they have a consortium behind this new stablecoin that is supposed to be backing it and acting as a regulator. They're saying that they're going to be completely different than USD Tether, as they're going to be opening their entire books to the auditors and being very transparent about it. So we'll see if that holds true.
All of that adding to the excitement here at the Forbes Under 30 Summit. Good to have you here. Great to be here with you.
Thank you. It's so exciting.
And we've got more coming up right now, including a fellow I met yesterday who may have a way, at least in theory, to cure cancer. That's coming to you right now. And we're pleased to be joined by Andre Watson, who is the founder and CEO of Ligandol. Now, you're not going to believe this, but this is a guy I was telling you about earlier that I was speaking with him yesterday, and he may have at least a theoretical way to cure cancer, at least the mechanism to go about that. Andre, welcome.
Thank you, Bart.
So, Andre, give us the 100,000-foot overview of what you're doing at Ligandol.
So we're developing gene therapies. And that is really something that traditionally the field of medicine has struggled to deliver on. We literally build delivery systems. So we figure out how to target specific cells, tissues, organs, and genetically reprogram them. In other words, there are sort of these molecular zip codes of each cell type in your body having something unique about it. And we figure out how to be the FedEx and the Amazon of that delivery, coupling our delivery systems to tools like CRISPR, which have recently had a lot of fame for their ability to do gene editing. So we're really the first company that couples a gene editing tool with a cell-specific targeting technology, allowing us to reprogram at will various cellular behaviors. So some of the first things that we're doing are developing immunotherapies where we can target T cells, which are a type of immune cell in your blood, and tell them to attack different cancer markers. So this is actually a pretty mature field, and as of 2017, Novartis had their first drug approved in the US for a gene therapy that is actually being applied for immunotherapy and treating a form of leukemia, where you can target a specific marker on the leukemic cells by reprogramming immune cells to attack that. The problem is that it's really expensive. It costs about $270K or something in that range for these companies for their cost of goods to manufacture those therapies. And we think we can drop that by at least 10x by replacing the need for viruses with non-viral technology that is very rapidly tunable and precise.
All right, and go a little bit deeper now. I mean, how do you actually do that?
So all cells have receptors. Receptors are these proteins that are on the membrane of the cell, hanging out on the outside for different molecules to bind to. So for example, many people are familiar with serotonin. Serotonin has serotonin receptors. So extending that idea, if you know that a neuron has a given set of receptors and an immune cell has a given set of receptors, those receptors do not necessarily overlap. So if you know what the receptors are, you can design ligands that bind to the receptors, hence the name of our company, Ligandol. What we figured out is that we can take these ligands that bind to the receptors and couple them to the gene therapy or gene editing payloads. When they bind to the cell in the form of these nanoparticles sticking to a cell, so just for scale, a nanoparticle is around 100 nanometers. A cell is anywhere between 10,000 and 100,000 nanometers. So the nanoparticle, which is small, sticks to the receptors, and the cell starts pulling it in and actively transporting it into itself. It's almost like how a virus works, but we don't use viral entry mechanisms.
And you mentioned leukemia, but viruses too, right? So this can be a pretty important deal.
I mean, to give you an example, if you wanted to make someone either immune to or resistant to an existing infection of HIV, there are known ways to do that. So there are actual viral entry mechanisms that HIV uses. It binds to this receptor, for example, called CCR5. And it was discovered that in people who are resistant to HIV, they have a mutation in that receptor. So you can actually create that mutation in your blood cells and your immune cells to confer that resistance. Just as an example of how you would treat that. So there are various companies that are trying to basically cut out the viral genes from these cells, right? But ultimately it needs delivery in order to succeed.
Well, Andre, what's your background? What inspired you to do this?
So I'm a biomedical engineer with a background in biomaterial science and nanomaterials. Really, when I was studying at RPI, which is Polytechnic University in New York, I stumbled on really drug and gene delivery as a specific subset of bioengineering that I wanted to focus on. So I started looking for different projects that would make sense, and I found this lab that had an early gene editing tool that was a precursor to CRISPR, which was quite an effective tool that needed to be delivered, and we had these mouse models of bone fragility. So my task for the next 2 years became, how do I build a delivery system for that? Because looking around at the literature, there were 2 publications on gene editing nanoparticles, and they were getting 0.4% efficiency. So we ended up creating, I have the first patent that was ever filed on delivering a guided nuclease, which is a gene editing tool that has a guide component for binding to a specific site of the genome and performing a cut, basically packaging those tools into nanoparticles. It was also the first patent that ever spoke about cell-specifically targeting a gene editing tool. So that was kind of the basis of me deciding to buy a one-way ticket to San Francisco, and I raised money for our company and have been working on that for 5 years now.
Money is always a problem for startups, at least most of them. Yours is pretty complicated to be, pitching to angel investors or venture capitalists. How's the business going forward so far? How's the money raised?
About 70% of our money, we've raised about $4 million to date. About 70% of it has been from high net worth individuals, a lot of founders of multi-billion-dollar companies, people in biotech, different industries. The other 30% is from venture capital, but more social impact-driven funds. So what we've really encountered in the venture capital community is that you kind of have this rift. You have your, maybe typical Silicon Valley tech VCs who want quick exits, and then you have your more traditionalist Boston biotech VCs. And so the middle ground of that is a harder territory to navigate, that at the same time is necessary to navigate to build a sustainable business in an industry where typically people do maybe 1 or 2 product plays, and then once your product hits a clinic, it's all about let's push that through because that's going to be a multi-billion-dollar drug if it works. 10, 15 years later, we'll know. That's the old model of biotech and pharma. I think the new model, we see a lot more platform technologies like CRISPR, like gene editing, like RNA therapies for transient genetic reprogramming. And those technologies can be applied to a lot of things because it's literally genetic code. So you have to question, where can I deliver that genetic code to in terms of a cell type? And then what are the addressable diseases that come about from that? So I think the industry doesn't really know how to think about platforms yet because it's still very vertical. And we want to figure out how to do things that are vertical but still have this opportunity to really, that analogy of the Amazon, of the FedEx, of creating zip codes and being able to ship to them. Right now people can ship to the liver and they can deliver to some cells outside of your body and a couple of other things. But there isn't really a broadly addressable way to make gene therapies for different specific applications.
And you mentioned that this could cost $270,000, but you could reduce it by tenfold to $2,700. And I think you were telling me last time we spoke that in the UK, for example, they've rejected that even, at least for certain people. Explain that a little bit more.
Yeah, so and specifically I should mention that is their cost of goods. They price the drug at $470K. And so when I say 10x reduction in cost of goods, that's a prospective statement for what I believe we can achieve. Realistically, I want to see this be, pennies on the dollar. I want gene therapy to be so inexpensive and accessible that it can be a globally accessible technology, right? But with that said, really the barriers are that in the UK, they decided that this drug called Chimera, which is a T-cell immunotherapy for treating leukemia, they decided that if you're under 25, you can get it. If you're over 25, you can't. I believe that was the latest take on that. In the US, Novartis had trouble reaching their margins, so I believe they made $170 million or so in their first year of selling the drug, or the first 8 months, and they're pricing at $470. So if you consider how many people have leukemia and how many people could be getting that drug, it's really not reaching the people. And the reason is because it takes 3 to 6 weeks to manufacture this technology. You have to manufacture viruses that are specific to the edits you want to perform, separately from growing these cells from your own body. Meanwhile, you're dying from cancer. And so if you can make that turnaround time shorter and make the technology tunable enough that you can really customize what you're programming cheaply and quickly, you suddenly have a much broader set of diseases that you can go after, even within like reprogramming T cells to go after cancer markers.
You know, you can't talk to somebody like yourself, Andre, and not think, you know, what a visionary you are. What is a visionary's vision? What are your goals for this thing?
I want to see this technology get to the point where you can go into a clinic, have an unknown disorder of some kind, that there will be some biopsy. You'll figure out precisely what is molecularly wrong with the tissue or organ of interest. So you will have sequencing, you'll have proteomics, you will actually fully profile that cell, and you'll say, this is what's wrong. If we could fix this, it wouldn't be wrong. And then in a day, maybe a week, we design something that targets that very precisely and delivers one or more or a dozen different genetic reprogramming instructions that regenerate that tissue or organ. And so that goes well beyond just single genetic diseases and immunotherapies, and really extends into regenerative medicine and aging as a disease as well.
Andre, I've never met anybody, and hopefully I will in the future, but I've never met anybody who has a delivery-guided nucleus. Thank you so much for the forward thinking and what you're doing. That's Andre Watson, the founder and CEO of Ligandel. Thanks, Andre. That's it for this time. Thank you for being on board. We sure had fun. We're going to be doing more of it in the coming days. You can always catch Boom Bust on DirecTV Channel 321, Dish Network Channel 280, or streaming 24/7 on Pluto TV. That's the free TV app, Channel 132. Or you can catch us always at youtube.com/BoomBustRT. So long for now.
So, how can you make the most of your time with David Lloyd clubs? Well, there's the gym, of course. Then there's the pools, courts, one of these, and this place with all this lovely stuff. Somewhere to work or kick back. Loads of things for kids. Oh, and all the classes. And there's the bikes. Your time. Make the most of it. Try a 3-month membership today. Search davidlloyd.co.uk or call 0345 1200 111.
Motorama says stop buying cars. Motorama says stop spending more than you want. Motorama says stop paying eye-watering deposits. Motorama says stop buying. Start leasing. With Motorama, you can lease a brand new Vauxhall Astra for just £169 a month. Go to Motorama.com. You'll never buy a car again.
If you've thought about buying gold or silver bars and coins, it's so easy to buy direct, safely and securely from Direct Bullion, with fast and free, fully insured delivery on UK orders, and all parcels discreetly packaged and delivered to your door. Direct Bullion aims to provide a gold standard customer service with glowing 5-star reviews and a top recommended precious metals dealer by the Spears 500. Go online or call 0800 055 7050 to receive our expert guide to buying gold or silver.
Brett Kavanaugh fools. Is there a plan B?
I have 2 questions about Judge Kavanaugh.
What does that have to do with trade? I don't mind answering the question, but, you know, I'd like to do the trade
It has
questions.
to do with the other headline in the news.
Sexual assault allegations against Donald Trump's Supreme Court nominee overshadow the announcement of a crucial new trade deal with America's neighbors. Also in our headlines this hour, Germany reportedly joins other European countries and greenlights a multi-million-dollar arms deal with Saudi Arabia. That's despite outcry over the Saudis' participation in the Yemeni conflict. And civil war in South Sudan has claimed almost 8 times more lives than previously thought, according to a newly released report. Wherever you're tuning in from around the world this hour, welcome to Moscow and to RT International. I'm Ewan O'Neill. Our top story. Donald Trump has fulfilled one of his campaign promises, a new trade deal between America, Canada and Mexico. But the announcement of the landmark agreement was overshadowed by sexual misconduct allegations against the U.S. President's Supreme Court nominee, Brett Kavanaugh. And it also added fuel to Trump's standoff with the media.
Truly historic news. This will be a new dawn. This landmark agreement, this new deal will be the most modern, up-to-date and balanced trade agreement in the history of our country.
Brett Kavanaugh fools. Is there a plan B?
I have 2 questions about Judge Kavanaugh.
This weekend, Mr. President, you said that it's incorrect to say you're limiting the scope of the FBI investigation.
What does that have to do with trade? I don't mind answering the question, but, you know, I'd like to do the trade
It has
questions.
to do with the other headline in the news, which is the Kavanaugh
I know, but how about talking about trade, and then we'll get to that. Do you have a question on trade? We'll do 1 or 2 more questions on trade.
You answered several questions
Okay,
on
don't
trade.
do that. That's not nice.
Mr. President,
and besides that, somebody is before you. Excuse me. Don't do that. Do you have a question on trade?
You answered several questions.
Do you have
on
a
trade.
question on trade?
My question is on Judge
Okay,
Kavanaugh.
please. Question? Yeah, go ahead. She's shocked that I picked her. Like in a state of shock.
I'm not thinking, Mr.
That's
President.
okay. I know you're not thinking. You never do.
It was Trump's big day as he unveiled a new deal with Canada and Mexico that's supposed to replace NAFTA. And if you remember, he once called NAFTA the worst deal ever. But Trump's replacement deal is apparently a historic transaction. The deal, which took over a year to negotiate, is called the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement. And it'll apparently solve all of the problems with NAFTA, as in it'll open markets to farmers and manufacturers and reduce trade barriers. But during his campaign, Trump had promised to either renegotiate NAFTA or break it. So this new deal fulfills that promise. But at the press conference, journalists weren't concerned about the deal. They were really interested in the Kavanaugh case. And to remind the viewers, Kavanaugh is Trump's Supreme Court nominee who was accused of sexual harassment. Some have even said that Trump's moment was stolen from him. So an important development in economic policy was once again overshadowed by the latest liberal scandal of the moment. And it doesn't look like it'll stop anytime soon.
OK, to a developing story we're closely following today. Germany has approved new arms exports to Saudi Arabia worth almost $300 million. That is according to the German media, citing government officials. Now, the move came despite strong criticism of the Saudis for their participation in the Yemeni conflict, which has resulted in thousands of civilian casualties. But as RT's Ilya Petrenko reports, there's plenty more foreign countries willing to send weapons to Riyadh.
Innocent lives being taken away in Yemen by Saudi bombs. You may get the impression it's a big deal for them.
We are all concerned about the appalling humanitarian situation in Yemen
and the risk of harm to civilian populations.
This is the worst humanitarian crisis that in our time.
A humanitarian disaster.
This cannot become a forgotten crisis.
Speaking of deals, guess who Saudi Arabia and its coalition friends get their war machines from? These are called Leclerc tanks, made jointly by France and Germany. Here they are in a Yemeni desert. If it hadn't been for an Emirati mogul who once served as a middleman between Paris and Abu Dhabi, we might have never learned about the nuts and bolts of the tank purchase. But the guy didn't get his commission fee for his job as a broker. He went on to sue the French. Eventually, WikiLeaks spilled the beans on the trial and the contract numbers.
The contract with the government of the UAE was concluded on 6th of April 1993 for the delivery of 388 combat tanks Leclerc, 46 tank recovery armored vehicles, 2 training tanks, spare parts, ammunition, and various other deliveries at a price of $3,613,467,223.
Over $3.5 billion worth of tanks, one of the coalition's many tools to reduce Yemen to rubble. Of course, the Saudis see it as fight against terrorism. Up next, missiles. I'll show you another contract. The money's already been paid, although delivery's still pending. Saudi Arabia is getting 400 US-made laser-guided missiles from Spain. They cost Riyadh 9.2 million euros. That's pennies compared to the tanks I told you about earlier, but the newly elected Spanish government was having second thoughts about the deal. Eventually, though, they all vanished.
We found no reason not to fulfill our commitments. We've made a decision that we have to honor this contract.
This brings us to one of the biggest arms deals in the history of Canada. Ottawa's been wary of what's going on with human rights in Saudi Arabia. However,
change of government in Ottawa doesn't lead to the cancellation of contracts previously signed, but moving forward, we are committed to the kind of openness, transparency, and rigor.
Or the number of zeros on the $12 billion paycheck is just way too tempting. So hundreds of Canadian-made armored vehicles will be heading to the Middle East. Next time you hear politicians get emotional over innocent victims in Yemen, picture a massive dollar sign in your head.
There are the interests of the arms manufacturers, of course, the largest being the United States, something like 60 to 70% of the arms sales of Saudi Arabia coming from the United States. But the English, the French, the Germans, the Norwegians have historically sold weapons, and that's in African interest. The current leadership of Saudi Arabia feels empowered and enabled by their backing from the US, UK, and France.
Well, yesterday, Monday, Saudi Arabia admitted it had made mistakes in its attacks in Yemen during its 3-year campaign, which has left more than 10,000 civilians dead. That statement drew criticism from the United Nations, stated there's no evidence that anyone was sanctioned over those so-called errors.
These tree leaves are an endless source of nutrition at times when the World Food Programme lacks food for us. Tree leaves are our main food.
There
is no aid. One of my children suffers from mineral deficiencies, and doctor said that other has a kidney infection. We might die because of this food and because of the lack of aid and clean water.
We receive between 10 to 20 cases of mid to severe malnutrition on a daily basis, especially among children from displaced families from Abs and Hiran. Many children suffer from severe acute malnutrition due to the destitution and poverty in which displaced families live.
Another country suffering the devastating effects of conflict is South Sudan. The number of those dead as a result of the civil war in the African state has now reached almost 400,000. That's 8 times more than previously realized. Caleb Maupin takes a closer look at the unnoticed conflict.
South Sudan is the youngest country in the world, and according to a new report from the U.S. State Department, it's off to a pretty bleak start. Almost 400,000 people killed, half of them killed in the conflict, the other half dying of hunger and disease. Now, previously, prior to this report, the estimates had only been in the tens of thousands, but now it looks like the numbers of deaths in South Sudan are approaching the number that have died in the conflict in Syria. Pretty bleak, but it wasn't always like this. Now, in the 1990s, there was no South Sudan. Sudan was one country, and it was embroiled in the longest-running civil war in the continent. However, there were some perks. At that point, Sudan had lots of oil to sell, and China was pouring in investments. And that is when the sanctions rolled in. Sudan was declared to be a state sponsor of terror. Bombed a factory in 1998 that he said was making chemical weapons.
Our forces also attacked a factory in Sudan associated with the bin Laden network. The factory was involved in the production of materials for chemical weapons.
But actually, the factory was just making medicine. No evidence of chemical weapons has ever been produced. Now, the USA pushed for South Sudan's independence. In 2011, the USA hailed South Sudan for breaking away and becoming a new country.
We warmly welcome the Republic of South Sudan into the community of sovereign nations.
But the euphoria did not last long.
It breaks my heart to see what South Sudan has become today.
The country fell into a civil war between rival clans. The president turned against the vice president, and mass killings and hunger ensued. And all this killing was a headache for the United Nations. So, with a new administration now in the White House, the U.S. role in South Sudan is being reassessed.
The United States government will not continue in a partnership with leaders who are only interested in perpetuating an endless war characterized by ethnically motivated atrocities. The government of South Sudan has lost credibility, and the United States is losing patience.
Yes, South Sudan is yet another example of the U.S. State Department telling us that they're going to go rescue some poor oppressed people on the other side of the planet. And then they're left spending money to analyze results showing that the conditions overall are getting a lot worse.
To an extent, the world seemed to have forgotten about South Sudan. Not too long ago, it was the world that was rallying together to form this new nation, then at the expense of Northern Sudan, which was run by Bashir. And it would appear that petty politics between the Chinese and the US in terms of their respective influences on those countries have meant that, for now at least, the world seems to have forgotten about the Sudan crisis, seems to have forgotten about the displacement of people, women and children, and displacement of children across the nation, and it's very much an impoverished state. And of course, we know that a lot of things do not work effectively in South Sudan, and for all intents and purposes, the West and the international community seems to have turned a blind eye.
Now, a test case in England may be about to make historic changes to the rights of parents in the country. The unprecedented situation could reverse the previous requirement for a mother to be registered on every birth certificate. At the centre of the legal battle is a single parent who was born a woman but now lives as a man after undergoing surgery. He wants to be identified as the father or parent and says that not being allowed to do so violates his human right to privacy and family life. English law, however, states he must appear as the biological mother on the birth certificate, and all that is preventing him from receiving state benefits. While this is a unique case in England, since 2016, the US state of California has given parents the choice to pick between mother, father, or simply parent according to personal preference. Well, we got the views of LGBT campaigner Peter Tatchell and political commentator David Vance.
The question this case raises is, who should be on the birth certificate? Should it necessarily be mother or father, or could it just be parent? I think that it's not really important for legal reasons or any other practical reason why it has to be a mother.
Peter's just said this. Let's remove mother from the birth certificate and replace it with something more non-specific, such as parent. but mothers give birth to kids. Sorry, spoiler alert, that's how it's been, that's how it's always going to be, and no amounts of debate are going to change that biological fact.
Why not just make a reasonable accommodation in these small number of cases to acknowledge this person as the parent, so the child will know that this person is their parent legally as well as in reality.
This child would become the first child in the history of this country, and I believe anywhere else, who on their birth certificate the word mother is missing. So just consider this for a moment. Can you imagine the psychological damage that this would impact that child?
You know, the child will probably find it different and unusual, but as we've seen with same-sex parents, children get a handle on things pretty quickly. Love is about, you know, a parent's commitment and care for a child. What's on the birth certificate really doesn't affect that love and commitment.
In those instances that you've mentioned, same-sex couples, regardless of the configuration, the child was always born to a woman. Simple biological fact. You know what I mean? That's not being judgmental. It's a foundational fact that we must not run away from just because it might hurt some people's feelings.
There have been some trans men in a similar situation who have given birth, and they have accepted that they should be named as the mother. So this case is unique and it's different. But I think the number of instances that will be involved in a similar circumstance is so tiny, we should not get het up about it, and we should just make the accommodation.
But Peter, Peter, the law is not based on exceptions. The law must apply to all. You just can't operate it the way that you'd like to. So the fact of the matter is that this child was born to a woman, and therefore the birth certificate should reasonably reflect that reality.
Violence erupts once again in Spain's rest of Catalonia. The details in 90 seconds' time.
If you've thought about buying gold or silver bars and coins, it's so easy to buy direct, safely and securely from Direct Bullion, with fast and free, fully insured delivery on UK orders, and all parcels discreetly packaged and delivered to your door. Direct Bullion aims to provide a gold standard customer service with glowing 5-star reviews and a top recommended precious metals dealer by the Spears 500. Go online or call 0800 055 7050 to receive our expert guide to buying gold or silver.
Nineteen minutes past 9 a.m. here in Moscow this Tuesday morning. Welcome back. Frustration turned to violence in Barcelona on Monday. Pro-independence activists were marking 1 year since a referendum to break away from Spain was brutally quashed by Madrid. And police were back on the streets in force. Nearly 200,000 people gathered in Barcelona, the Catalan regional capital. Tear gas and rubber bullets were used to break up the crowds that had rallied in front of the Parliament building there. Campaigners burned Spanish flags and chanted pro-separatist slogans. A little earlier in the day, activists had blocked major roads and railway lines across the rest of the region. The British Defence Secretary Gavin Williamson has unveiled a new strategy for the Arctic, calling Russia the biggest threat to the region. 800 UK troops are due to be deployed to Norway next year. There have been disputes for decades over territorial claims over the planet's most northern point and concerning untapped natural resources under the seabed. The British Defence Ministry says the Arctic and the High North are now crucial to the country's security.
In the Arctic and High North, Russia is increasing their military presence. To deal with this, we will be launching our new Defence Arctic strategy. Beyond the High North and Arctic, we must be ready to deal with the threats as they emerge.
The new Defence Arctic strategy will put the Arctic and High North central to the security of the United Kingdom.
Britain has got no legitimate claim there whatsoever. So what we're doing, putting 800 troops at some considerable expense in Norway, not one of the cheapest countries in the world. So I don't quite get what is going on, because I mean, 800 troops is a drop in the ocean. I mean, this is not a serious force if you're talking about a conventional ground war, goodness sake. But, you know, the atmosphere is weird. The commander of the new British super aircraft carrier came on the media yesterday and said that Britain would win a naval war with Russia. I mean, firstly, what on earth? There is no possibility of a naval war with Russia. Secondly, if there was a war with Russia, it wouldn't just be a naval war, it would be a disaster. So I've no idea what this gung-ho attitude is, that really, you know, that we should be stepping up the ante by talking all the time about this military threat from Russia. The idea that Russia is about to launch a conventional war in the Arctic, which is all that these commandos could be there for, 800 of them, not enough to stop any serious operation, is a bit mind-boggling. So I think, firstly, this is playing to the gallery at the Conservative Party conference. Secondly, it's about the continued expansion of NATO forces around the borders of the former, and into the former Soviet Union.
Public companies in the US state of California are now legally required to have women on their board of directors. The law says that every public company should include at least one woman on its board by the end of the year, with that number increasing to 3 in a 3-year period. Companies could be fined at least $100,000 for a first offence, and any further offences will make that fine 3 times as much. Well, long awaited for many, the bill does provoke concerns, with Californian officials saying the move may impede further diversity goals and spark much public debate.
Creates discrimination now against other people in favor of women who might not even be qualified. I mean, you're talking about putting one woman in place there, and now we're having to mandate that where there are many women in the workplace that have been working hard. So rather than hoping for or encouraging in the workplace there to be equal treatment of women who do a good job, now we're just regulating and mandating it, which is undoubtedly going to cause anarchy in the workplace, is going to cause dissension among people, perhaps amongst other women who have been working hard, wondering why this woman got chosen just to meet a certain quota.
I think it's absolutely ridiculous to suggest that there is not a single woman qualified for, for the board of any public company in California. I think we all know that there are loads of women who are super well qualified, and the question should be, why haven't they been appointed to those boards already? Why have we put up with this outdated, white male boys club for so long? I think there are lots of people on boards in California and all over the world who aren't qualified, and I'm afraid to say the vast majority of them are men.
It only causes tension to grow against women, against the very party that they're trying to eliminate discrimination over. And so that's going to undoubtedly cause backfiring, a lot more animosity against women, not just from other men in the workplace who have been working very hard, but from other women in the workplace who might not be chosen to fit this one-woman quota type thing, from women who aren't going to be doing that. And so, it's causing dissension. It's really going against it, and it's going to continue to backfire against that until we change who we are intrinsically as Americans in the workplace, allowing equal rights because they are deserving of it and not because the law mandates it.
Absolutely, California should and will, on the back of the success of this legislation, add in further legislation that mandates that there be a person of colour on board, and then two people of colour, and so on and so forth. I think that's absolutely, these are not conflicting issues. It shouldn't be the case that women and people of colour, who incidentally, many women are also people of colour, but we shouldn't feel like there's a sort of diversity spot and we all have to fight for it. We should feel like we're all part of a movement that's working towards better balance on boards and working towards a future which actually, where companies like this belong to all of us, not to a tiny, you know, pale, male and stale corporate elite, which unfortunately seems to be a sort of, you know, a club which no one can break at the moment.
Yeah, why not have your say on that story if you so desire on our website rt.com. Also, don't miss a thing. You can always download the RT app. It's free, it's available, and it's ready to go right now. Live from Moscow, this is your 24/7 RT International.
When I first started the business, it was just me and a truckload of oranges. But as things grew, I knew I needed help. So I went to peopleperhour.com and found the right freelancers for the job. I needed a logo designer, I needed a web developer, I needed someone who actually understands numbers. I had a dream and People Per Hour helps me live it.
People Per Hour. Live your work dream. Use code ORANGE1 for your first hour free.
Go to vanarama.co.uk and Lisa Vanarama Van.
If you're fascinated by the remarkable history of gold coins, the Rosalind Book of Gold will amaze you. Discover British and American coins, and only from Rosalind, this collection inspired by the thrill of Formula One racing. This superb hardback book is packed with facts about gold. The gold coins you can buy, their history and design, and there's no obligation. So text GOLD to 66777 now for your free copy of the Rosalind Book of Gold.
Hello, I'm Ross Ashcroft and this is a promo for Renegade Inc., a new kind of talk show for the so-called post-truth era. The team behind the documentary Four Horsemen are back with a weekly show about life, work, politics, culture and business. We'll ask the questions other shows often miss, and I'll be exploring the issues with people who think differently. Together, we'll be calling out the elephant in the room. Except this one. There's not actually an elephant and technically it's not in the room. So join me, Renegade Inc., a new kind of talk show, only here on RT.
People talk about the sort of Brexit that there is going to be. Is it hard, soft? Is it grey, white?
We're making our views clear to the government. How dare they steal our fish?
The mess caused by Brexit is the biggest problem in the history of EU-UK relations.
There is no added value to Brexit. Brexit is a lose-lose game.
Is it heartbreaking?
Hard Brexit.
Oh, hard Brexit, I see. Is it heartbreaking? A lot of things are heartbreaking.
Can you deliver Brexit?
At every stage through these negotiations, people have cast doubt as to whether we were going to achieve what we wanted to achieve.
We want a red, white and blue Brexit.
Join me every Thursday on The Alex Salmon Show, when I'll be speaking to guests on the world of politics, sport, business and show business. I'll see you then.
Vous m'avez menacé que si je parle à quelqu'un, il risquerait de mourir ou de devenir fou. C'est un secret de l'Église.
A church secret indeed. Catholic priests accused of sexually abusing children can get away with it, quite literally.
I like to call this the geographic solution. So what the bishop needs to do then, he finds out that the priest is a perpetrator. He simply moves him to a different spot where the previous scandal is not known.
The highest ranks of the Catholic Church help conceal the accused priests from the police and justice.
Sua Santidad, en el caso Gracia, intentando influir a la justicia argentina.
Expose the truth. Protect the children. Expose the truth.
On
On Larry King Now, legendary actor Tom Berenger.
Yeah, it's kind of like Butch Cassidy, Sundance Kid sort of humor. We have those two guys on the road, you know, constantly at each other. And a little bit like Nicholson and Randy Quaid in The Last Detail, that kind of humor.
You think actors will soon be replaced by holograms?
I think it's going towards that. I think that could happen. I mean, and you think about it, could they just steal Humphrey Bogart's image or John Wayne's and then create them again?
Plus,
these three guys come walking up to me. One was a grandfather, one was a son, and one was his son, grandson. 3 generations, and they were all like talking about Major League.
It's all next on Larry King Now. Welcome to Larry King Now. Today's guest, Golden Globe and Emmy-winning actor Tom Berenger. He's best known for his Oscar-nominated role in the 1986 film Platoon, as well as the ever-popular Major League. Tom will star in the upcoming American Dresser, out in theaters on September 21st. 30 years since Platoon and Major League. You still get a lot of talk about those films?
Constantly. Particularly those two. And sometimes Sniper.
Yeah, and boy, were they different, those two films.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Maybe a reboot of Major League?
I don't think so. I just heard rumors and rumors and rumors and rumors, and I even talked to David Ward, the writer-director, about it once, but I just don't think that's going to happen.
When you got that script, did you know how funny it was?
I thought it was hysterical, and I thought because it was baseball, that would, you know, help it commercially and stuff, and it did. But it's because baseball doesn't change much, and I did think it would be successful. And they released it on the opening day of baseball, which I thought was pretty cool. The following spring, and I said one kind of nice tribute out of all of them for that was, I was in a coffee shop in Connecticut visiting my son, and I went out one morning just to have, you know, a little breakfast and coffee and read paper, and I'm in this coffee shop, and these 3 guys come walking up to me. One was a grandfather, one was his son, and one was his son, grandson. 3 generations, and they were all like talking about Major League. And the middle one, the son, had played a couple years with the Yankees too, so it was, I go, you know what? This is great, 3 generations, and I said, when I'm dead, and all of you are, they'll still be watching this, yeah.
Every time it comes on, you can't turn it off. It's too funny. Okay, American Dresser, tell me about it.
2 guys, best friends. They happen to both live on little different towns in Long Island. One is going a drinking problem and, you know, kind of post-war trauma. Also, his wife has passed away. And he's having problems with his daughter, his teenage daughter. And the other fella, his buddy, his old buddy from Vietnam, is got some physical problems. And they just decided to go on the road on their motorcycles.
And you?
The alcoholic that's having problems, his job is going to hell in a handbasket and having problems with his teenage daughter.
Yeah. And who plays the other guy?
Keith David, who also was in Platoon. He was, yeah, he was King, the machine gunner, that actually gets de-roast out at the end. He's one guy you see leaving on the helicopter at the before the last battle.
What a movie that was.
Yeah.
Okay, your character rides a motorcycle across the country, right?
Mm-hmm.
Did you shoot it riding across the country?
No, we shot up around Syracuse and the Finger Lakes area, and you know, picked up some shots riding through the orchards and whatnot there. And we did interiors, of course, but we then later had to go out there to South Dakota, and we picked up the Black Hills, downtown Sturgis, as well as the Badlands, which looked like an entirely different state, and the prairie between the two. And I said, let's shoot them different directions to change helmets, no helmet, you know, headband, no headband, change T-shirts. And I said, it's like could be anywhere going through Nebraska or Iowa or that area, and you know, and then the other direction.
Are you a biker?
Somewhat, yeah. Like I like going places, and my wife bikes. And
was this a fun shoot?
Yes, it was. It's got a lot of humor in it.
It does, huh?
Yeah, it's kind of like Butch Cassidy, Sundance Kid sort of humor. You know, those 2 guys on the road, you know, constantly at each other. And a little bit like Nicholson and Randy Quaid in The Last Detail, that kind of humor.
We're going to show a clip now of American Dresser with Tom Berenger.
I see you got the bike out.
Well, I thought she needed some attention. I wanted to take a ride. It's been way too long.
Where you headed? East toward Montauk?
Or the North Shore? The great Northwest, Master Sergeant.
I'll come with you.
I really think I need to do this one alone.
Why did you take this part?
It was the kind of the family element about it, too, that I like.
You're always working, aren't you?
Yeah, on something.
I mean, you're a star, character actor, but you've maintained your status in film.
I like to think so.
Any desire to go behind the camera?
No. I've seen a director's life, and it's not for me.
You've had quite a career, Tom. How'd you get in acting?
It was at the university. I was like a sophomore. I think I was about 19. I heard an ad on the radio for tryouts for a play at the University Theater, and I told my roommate, I said, I'm going to go do that. And he goes,
what school?
University of Missouri. And I said, well, I'm going to go try out for that. He goes, come on, you're not an actor. I go, yeah, but when does one begin? You know, so I did, and I got it. 4 characters, Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf? And it was a stunning play.
You were the visitor?
I was the visitor. The math
Great
professor.
play to do.
Oh, it's fabulous. I got hooked. If it had been something else, it might, you know.
You once told Charlie Sheen to move out of Hollywood.
I did.
Yeah. You did, didn't you?
Yes. But I actually lived in New York because I started in the theater there, and I operated out of New York, and that was fine and great for me. But and I worked all over the world, so what difference did it make where I lived? But I just thought it'd be a good idea for him because he's from there. You know, I said, why don't you get a house out in Montana or something, or Colorado? Just someplace away from here.
Would have helped him.
Yeah.
Where did you move to?
South Carolina.
Why South Carolina?
I like hurricanes.
You won an Emmy for The Hatfields and the McCoy. Remember that? That was a movie that was.
Yeah, yeah.
You always get interesting roles.
Yes. You know, whether they're commercially big or not, they're interesting, most of them, I have to say.
What attracts you when you get a script?
Well, I always have to say that, you know, like Hamlet said, the play is the thing. As he's coaching those actors and playing amateur director, he's saying that the writer, this was, of course, Shakespeare talking to his own actors. He says, you do what is written. You don't pad your part, you play it honestly. The play is the thing. And I go, the screenplay doesn't have it. It doesn't matter how good this character is.
You ever step back and do theater?
No, but I want to. I'd like to do a really long run of a really good play. And I talked to Glenn Close about, I suggested it to her in Toronto. I saw her, I said, Lion of Winter. She went, ooh. I go, yeah. I said, all the parts are great.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not just those 2, it's all of them. And I said, it's interesting. It's a comedy in 2 acts. It's called a comedy. Yeah.
It is.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny.
Anyone you really want to work with?
Well, I worked with Glenn before twice, but I would like to do that again.
Any director you really want to work with?
I'd like to work with Oliver again. Almost did once, but that got canceled.
What was it like working with him in Platoon?
Yeah, he was great. He was just. He had to shoot it fast, but he was really brilliant with it. When we did scenes in the jungle, like it's the entire platoon in a combat scene in the jungle, the second battle of the movie, and with the French church in the rain, and we finally get out on choppers and Elias gets killed. There's different parts. So what he did was he had us in 2s or 3s and 2s throughout the jungle, and he had like 3 cameras, and he just kept moving around. I goes, cut, I want to come back and do that again, and move on. Leave you there, and he would just keep going around. And it's a jungle, it's not a prairie, so you can't see everything, and he would go and shoot the other scene while you set up again, whether there were explosions or, you know, equipment.
Where'd you shoot Platoon?
Philippines.
What a movie.
Oh, Charlie Sheen, he and I were standing there waiting for a lighting setup, and he was looking at the Filipino crew, and he goes, you see those guys looking at me? I went, yeah. Why are they staring at you? He goes, you know what, well, I was here when I was a little kid. My dad did Apocalypse, and I think those guys were in the crew. I went, yeah, that must be it. I said, my dad was here too. He goes, what movie was he in? I went, Charlie, it was the real war. What? I said, Liberation of the Philippines with MacArthur.
That's funny. He was in a movie, Apocalypse.
No.
You star in a movie called Firstborn, comes out later. Filmmaker Tony Kaye is already talking about a sequel in which he'll use a robot as the lead actor.
I haven't heard that. Yeah.
What is Firstborn about?
It's about, see, my character is a California politician whose daughter is married to a young Iranian guy, and then his father and mother come over to visit. There's a reason they have to come, for medical reasons or something. So they come over to Los Angeles, and then he and I get into it about things. Yeah.
You were quoted a couple of years ago saying you think actors will soon be replaced by holograms.
Yeah, I did say that.
Where do you think the industry's going?
I think it's going towards that. I think that could happen. I mean, and you think about it, could they just steal Humphrey Bogart's image or John Wayne's and then create them again? And I mean, you could see him in a play, or you could see him in a movie again, and then they could control them. The producers could run the whole, you know, thing and control your acting. Yeah.
And who do you pay?
I don't know if you'd have to pay their estates, but you could invent actors too. And then you don't need them anymore.
What's it coming to, Tom?
I don't know, but I will say this. I don't really understand the way it works anymore. It's totally different than when I started.
In what way?
Well, I kind of like, I guess I saw sort of the end of, there were independent films and stuff, but I think I kind of saw the end of the studio films, and it's just different. I mean, they'll do a big, huge, elaborate space kind of movie production, but they don't do a lot of more intimate stories.
Was it better then?
I think it was. But I hate to sound like just somebody talking about, yeah, well, the new generation, you know, that I hate to be that way, but it's the business too. It's not a generational thing.
What do you like most about theater?
Theater is always about the writing. And when you actually do it, you could do a new play with the playwright, or you do an old play and the playwright's not there anymore. But it's always about the play. It's about the writing, and they are the stars, the real stars.
But when the curtain opens, it ain't the director anymore.
No, it's not.
It's up to you.
Yeah, it is, and you have to be your own editor, in a way. Yeah.
After the break, a round of our fan favorite segment, If You Only Knew, with Platoon and American Dresser star Tom Berenger. We'll find out about his guilty pleasure, if he has a secret talent, maybe the strangest job he ever had. We'll have fun with Tom Berenger right after this.
Motorama says stop buying cars. Motorama says stop spending more than you want. Motorama says stop paying eye-watering deposits. Motorama says stop buying. Start leasing. With Motorama, you can lease a brand new Vauxhall Astra for just £169 a month. Go to Motorama.com. You'll never buy a car again.
Leave a gift in your will and help be there for every child. Search NSPCC Guardians to request your free legacy information pack.
If you've thought about buying gold or silver bars and coins, it's so easy to buy direct, safely and securely from Direct Bullion. With fast and free, fully insured delivery on UK orders, and all parcels discreetly packaged and delivered to your door. Direct Bullion aims to provide a gold standard customer service with glowing 5-star reviews and a top recommended precious metals dealer by the Spears 500. Go online or call 0800 055 7050 to receive our expert guide to buying gold or silver.
You can criticise me if you want to, but please don't criticise the truth.
Very good, you stole my line.
£350 million a week.
I've been saying the numbers mean something. They matter. The U.S. has over $20 trillion in debt. More than 10 white-collar crimes happen each day. 85% of global wealth belongs to the ultra-rich, 8.6%. Markets saw a 30% rise last year, some with 400 to 500 trades per second. And Bitcoin rose to $20,000. China's building a $2.1 billion AI industrial park. But don't let the numbers overwhelm you. The only number you need to remember is one. One business show you can't afford to miss. The one and only Boom Bust.
Civil war in South Sudan has claimed almost 8 times more lives than previously thought. That's according to a US-funded report. Also in the program, Germany reportedly greenlights another multi-million-dollar arms deal with Saudi Arabia, keeping pace with other European suppliers. And it's despite outcry over the Saudis' participation in the Yemeni conflict. Also ahead.
Brett Kavanaugh fools. Is there a plan B?
I have 2 questions about Judge Kavanaugh.
What does that have to do with trade? I don't mind answering the question, but, you know, I'd like to do the trade question.
It has to do with the other headline in the news.
Sexual assault allegations against Donald Trump's Supreme Court nominee overshadow the announcement of a crucial new trade deal with America's neighbors. And riots on the streets of Barcelona as the rest of Catalan region marks a year since an unsanctioned independence referendum faced a brutal clampdown from Madrid. Around the clock across the world, this is RT International. From the team and myself, Ewan O'Neill, welcome to the programme. Our top story. The independence of South Sudan in 2011 was seen by the world as a way out of a decades-long civil war. But just 2 years later, a new conflict erupted in Africa's youngest nation. A damning new report suggests that the death toll from the war has reached almost 400,000 people. Caleb Maupin breaks down the deadly facts now.
South Sudan is the youngest country in the world, and according to a new report from the U.S. State Department, it's off to a pretty bleak start. Almost 400,000 people killed, half of them killed in the conflict, the other half dying of hunger and disease. Now, previously, prior to this report, the estimates had only been in the tens of thousands, but now it looks like the numbers of deaths in South Sudan are approaching the number that have died in the conflict in Syria. Pretty bleak, but it wasn't always like this. Now, in the 1990s, there was no South Sudan. Sudan was one country, and it was embroiled